everybody, and welcome to what can best be described as a very special top 5 board gaming video. Today we are going to be talking all about art. And I don't mean the art of board games. I already did a video about my favorite box arts. I did one about miniatures and all this kind of stuff. We're going to be talking more broadly. And in this case, what I mean is two major categories for this. I'm going to be talking about games that are literally about art in some form or another. That is to say, you are making art, you are selling art, you know, stuff like that. The other major category is the figurative art, where it's more of a game that is designed to be artful. And this is a conversation that has happened not only amongst board games, but also in video games as well as tabletop games, all this kind of stuff. Like, what is art? Is this considered art? Is this an artistic expression? Like, all this kind of stuff. So the games that I'm going to be talking about that are literally about art and, you know, what you are doing with the art, those games I will be talking about, obviously. But what I'm more curious about from you guys, the people watching, and your feedback, is what you think about the games in general. Like, do you feel that a game like, I mean, just as an example, Cosmic Encounter, my favorite game of all time, do you consider that a game that is artful? Do you consider that game to be art? Or do you think that it's just very, like, methodical and almost mechanical in the way that it works, and that it's not what you personally consider art? So again, this is a category that is ridiculously broad and open to a massive number of interpretations. The few games that I'm going to be talking about, obviously only 5, I'm going to be talking about a couple of games that fit more into the figurative aspect of art, where they are games that are artful or artsy, for lack of a better term. And then the other games I'm going to be talking about are ones that are actually about art and doing art, making art, doing things to the art, you know, that kind of stuff. So again, I am very curious what you guys have to say about this category, what you all think, obviously any other games that you enjoy, and particularly the so-called artsy games that you really like to play. But with that said, without further ado, I'm going to jump right on ahead into my number 5. At number 5, I've got a game that falls into the category of being artsy rather than being necessarily about art, although you could argue it one way or the other. The game itself is Dixit. For those of you who haven't played this, it's very, very similar to something like Apples to Apples or Cards Against Humanity if you're a terrible person like me. But the idea is that instead of using words, you use images. So the person, the judge, whatever you want to call them, will say a phrase, a word, sing a song, do something that describes what it is they're putting down. And then everybody else has to pick another card, some kind of image that they have in their hand that also fits that description. And the idea is that everybody votes on which one is most represents that particular phrase or quote or whatever it happens to be. So again, this is one that is much more interpretive than it is literal. Although at the same time, the actual images on the cards are gorgeous. They really are. And it's one of these things that, like, they make you think in the weirdest way, because it's just like if you go to like an art museum or something like that and you see like abstract impressionism and things like this that are just like kind of weird, and it's like, I don't understand what's going on here, but I like it. And in a way, that's the entire point of the game. The whole point is that you have something that really is very unfamiliar, and that's the idea behind it. And you're trying to figure out, how do I describe this but not in too much detail and stuff like that. So it really is a fun game. It's a great game, very easy to play, obviously. If you know how to play some of these other party style games, then you can very easily get into it. There's a ton of expansions and all sorts of crazy stuff. But like I said, for me personally, this game is more about the artsy style, where it's art for the sake of art. You are saying, like, look, these are absolutely gorgeous images. It's a very intriguing game. It's a lot of fun. But this is not literally about the art itself. And again, there's so many ways to interpret it. But for me personally, that's why I put it in this particular category itself. Either way, Dixit, my number 5. 4, I've got another game that fits more into the category of being artsy rather than being about art itself. And in this case, it's not necessarily about pictures, but it's more about the words that you're associating with everything. The game itself is Winter Tales. This is a game that is very, very interesting because you, as a collective group, are creating a story. That's the idea. And it's weird because a lot of people don't like this game because of the fact that it's relatively abstract in terms of the way that it finishes, in terms of the way that you actually win the game. It is very, very strange. But at the same time, again, it is an extremely artsy, creative endeavor to actually play through this game, and for me, I have fun with it. I like it, and I am not really a very creative person. I am not good at doing art. I'm not good at interpreting art. If I see something, then I know whether or not I like it. I might not be able to describe why, but I know if I don't, and if I try to create art, I just make a giant mess. But for me, something like this, I really enjoy. Like, I've never been very good with words. I don't like writing stories. I'm bad at it. But, I mean, this game is a lot of fun. I really personally enjoy it, even though it has that somewhat abstract means of finishing, like completion, all this kind of stuff. I think it's good. I really like the way that it fits into my personal description of this more artsy idea, this artsy category, rather than being actually about art necessarily. But either way, Winter Tales, my number 4. And number 3, we've got a game that unfortunately I do not own. Actually, all 3 of my top 3 games I do not own. But the number 3 game is a game called Modern Art. Modern Art really epitomizes a lot of the way that many art-based games work. And that is, you're talking about art auctions. You're talking about selling them. And in the case of Modern Art, a lot of it tends to be about the market for actually how you're going to get money. So you're taking a risk on unknown artists. Excuse me. You're taking a risk on what are essentially unknown artists and seeing if later on in the game you're going to be able to actually make some money off of them and that kind of thing. So it's kind of cool. I really like the game because all of the cards are unique. You're not talking about like famous works of art, which for me is not really a bad thing. Again, I am not an artsy person. I don't know any of that stuff. I've been to museums, I've been to art museums, I know of art, but I really don't care that much about it. With this game, I like the idea that they've got the different artists and they have very distinct styles. So I think it's kind of cool in that sense. And at its core, this is really an auction game. That's really what Modern Art is. That's really what it's all about. And for me personally, I find that really fun. I think it's a great mechanic. It's perfect for art because that's what we always see. You know, we see like on CSI and all this kind of stuff. Oh, this art was stolen from the auction. Oh no. Like we see that this is what we know for art. Most people, this is what we know about art, is that it gets auctioned off for like $18 million. And we're like, it's a vase filled with flowers, dude. Why are you paying millions of dollars for it? And again, it's about the artist. It's not about me. I don't care. But suffice to say, Modern Art is really fun. Again, this is actually the first art, like actual literal game about art that I played. I had a tremendous amount of fun with it. I would still, if I actually owned a copy. Unfortunately, I don't. I believe that it's out of print now, but it's a lot of fun if you get a chance to try it out. The auction is just really fun, and the art is more of like a frame, so to speak, for the actual auction mechanic, which is really where the core gameplay comes in. But either way, Modern Art, my number 3. Moving on to number 2, and like I said, another game that I unfortunately do not own. We are talking about Pastiche. Pastiche is a very, very interesting game that I found tremendously fun. In this, you sort of take over all aspects of art creation. You're talking about buying and mixing colors so that you can make the individual things. You're talking about very famous paintings from numerous centuries, spanning a lot of art history, all of this kind of stuff. I love the way that the game is laying out. I love that you're using I don't even know what it's called, but it's the board where they put all the paints on it. Like I said, I don't remember what it's called, but it's really cool. It's really neat to see that in the game, and it's something that really immerses me into it. And again, I am not an artistic person, I'm not a creative person, but I find the game mechanics to be very, very fun, and I think that they make perfect sense for what you're actually doing in the game. And it's really neat. And again, it's something that you can really technically learn from, because you can see all of these very famous paintings and you can be like, oh, I remember that painting, I've seen that in something before, oh, it was in that game that I played. Like, how often are you able to say that phrase? So it's kind of cool, and again, I love the way that they went about mixing the mechanics with actual artistic endeavor, so to speak. And it's just a lot of fun. It's a really cool little game. Pastiche, my number 2. And number 1, once again, the other game that I do not own, is Fresco. Fresco is a tremendously well done game that I love for several reasons, and the first reason is that I personally feel that, well, just like pretty much any of these games, but far more so with Fresco, is that the game mechanics are very much first and foremost. You're talking about worker placement, you're talking about similar mechanics to something like Dungeon Lords or Alchemists, where you've got different actions that you can take, you've only got a set number of workers, not only that, but you have to keep your workers or your apprentices happy. You got to go out, you got to buy and mix paint, you got to make portraits so that you can earn money, so that you can buy more stuff, so that eventually you can make these masterpieces. And well, essentially you're trying to repair a fresco is really what it is. For those of you who don't know, fresco is actually a type of painting where the artist would paint into wet plaster, and so as the plaster dried, then it would make a permanent painting. So you're not talking about you generally don't have fading when it comes to frescoes, because it's like a wall now. It's not like a canvas where painting can drip off. It's embedded into a wall, so it's not going to go anywhere. But suffice it to say, the whole point of the game is that you're trying to repair a fresco. You're trying to just brighten it up just a little bit and this kind of stuff, and that's the idea of the game. But again, I love the fact that the mechanics are very, very first and foremost. I love that it is primarily a very strategic game. It's something that I enjoy as a somewhat hardcore gamer. Not extremely hardcore, obviously, but it's just one that I have had a lot of fun with the very few times that I've played it. And again, it's a cool way to incorporate the literal making and sale and really reconstruction of art into a board game, and I think that they did a great job with it. I absolutely love it. Fresco, my number 1. So that's it for me, folks. I hope that you enjoyed this video on my little interpretations on what art is in board gaming, whether it is a game that is artsy, that is to say, it is a game that is more about being an artful experience, versus a game that is actually about art itself, the actual physical art. So again, this is something that I am very, very curious about as far as you guys are concerned, to see what you guys think. How would you interpret this category? Do you lean towards games that are designed as pieces of art that you play through and it just sort of makes you go like, wow, that was just such a unique experience? Or do you like games that actually include artistic endeavors, or are art pieces, paintings, whatever it happens to be, so that potentially maybe you could even learn something historically about famous pieces and all this kind of stuff. Very, very curious to see what you guys have to say. Again, I do hope that you enjoyed this video, and with that, I will see you next time. Thank you so much again, everybody, for watching my video on my top 5 favorite art games. Once again, I know this is an enormously interpretable category, and again, that's also why I decided to pick it. So, what are your guys' favorite games for this? Do you prefer the more literal translation of art and what it means in gaming, or do you prefer something a little bit more figurative and like games that are more artsy for the sake of being artsy? Either way, I would love to hear it. This is something that I think would make some very interesting discussion, so please put anything and everything into the comments below. As always, I've got several playlists linked up at the top of the page to see more of my stuff, and you can click on that big giant subscribe button to see more of me in the future. With that, thank you very much again, and I will see you next time.